will call to order the meeting of the Fire and Police Commission on May 23rd at 4 p.m. And Ms. Clerk, could we conduct a roll call?
Absolutely. Commissioner Herlinger?
Present.
Commissioner Jones?
Aquí.
Commissioner Rodriguez?
Present.
Chair Dozer is absent today. Moving on to Vice Chair Hill.
Present. All right, so let the record reflect that Chair Dozer is absent, but that we have a quorum and we can continue with the hearing. So are there any changes to the agenda, Madam Clerk?
Vice Chair Hill, we do not have any changes to the agenda.
All right, we will move on then to do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do we have any public comments about the changes to the agenda? Not with respect to, no, that's general public comments. All right. So we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Second, all right. Let's vote.
Motion passes.
The next item, I believe, is general public comment.
Chair Hill, we have one in-person comment.
All right. Could that person come to the speaking platform, and you will have 2 minutes for public comment.
My name is Scott Burns. I'm with Santa Barbara Sunrise Rotary. My Rotary Club is involved with something called the Rotary Action Group Addiction Prevention. June 19th, we're going to have something called Train the Trainers, where we're training people on how to use naloxone to get rid of fentanyl if somebody overdoses. And then once we train the trainers over the next couple of years, we will be training people on a monthly basis. That's one part of the program. The other part of the program is school education, but what Rotary has learned in time is if you just talk about school education, everybody puts it off. So now we're talking about getting this resolved. And then what we found in other communities is people go, yeah, well, let's educate the students also, because it's really a really bad problem. 85% of the addicts in America, if I could say that correctly, start as a teenager. So we've really got to stop that. Anyway, just so you let you know it's out there and that we're doing it. And while a lot of people are doing a lot of good things to stop it, more needs to be done, and that's why we're involved in it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burns. All right. Do we have any telephonic public comments?
Vice Chair Hill, we do not have online public comment.
All right.
Item-
Move to the next item on our agenda, please.
Item number 5, approval of meeting minutes from April 25th, 2024.
Do we have any comments or questions with respect to the minutes? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Move for vote? Has everyone voted? Someone needs to lock their vote. Aha, good.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. So, Madam Clerk, could we move on to the first presentation?
Item 6, presentation on the Santa Barbara Police Station project.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Hill and Commissioners. My name is Brad Hess. I'm the Principal Project Manager for the City of Santa Barbara in charge of special projects. And this is a very special project, to say the least. So thank you for having us. We're looking forward to giving you this update. We were looking and realizing that it's been almost 2 years to the day since we were here last, providing you guys with an update. So some of this will be up to you. I believe they'll actually ask you the question as far as how much detail you'd like us to go into. But I'm going to give you some general information, history, bring you up to speed. I know, Commissioner Jones, you have not heard this before, so might be looking at you mostly. We'll see. But with me, I have Brian Cornell and Jeff Hornbuckle from Cornell Collective. And before we get going, just want to let you guys know how great a team we have. It's been a spectacular experience working not only with these two, but all of the subs that we have working on this project are amazing. So we're putting together a great project, and it's going to be delivered well. And let me get into the history. So you may remember that the existing police station was built in 1959. It's been too small since the 80s. And in 1999, a bond measure failed, which was really the first huge effort to get a new police station. But in 2017, Measure C passed, which is the 1% sales tax, which is our funding source. We shortly thereafter, well, actually, then I got hired in 2018. We hired Cornell Collective and started the site selection. We looked at about 20 different sites throughout the city, focusing primarily on those that the city owns. We evaluated 6, and then we, in depth, studied 2. In September of 2019, the Coda commuter parking lot was selected as the preferred site for environmental study. So we jumped into that environmental review, resulting in a mitigated negative declaration, or MND, and subsequent to that, we had to actually go back and reconfirm that this was, in fact, the best site, which delayed the project just about a year. COVID happened. That delayed it another about 6 months. And then the site was officially selected in July of 2022. The acceptance of the MND happened at that time, and then we officially launched the design team into design development and construction drawings. So almost 2 years later from that, we have our full entitlements. We're in plan check with building and safety. We are scheduled to resubmit this weekend, possibly early next week. And if all goes well, we're hoping to have our building permit in July. So there's our, hopefully, synopsis of the history of the last 6 years. Moving forward, though, what's next? So we just brought on a construction management firm. It's a local firm called Tynan Group. You may have worked with them or heard of them. We have 6 pre-qualified contractors set up to receive the request for proposal and the bid package. That will go out, the RFP will go out once we actually have a permitted set to send out. That RFP is currently being prepared. The goal is to have a selected general contractor by late August, early September. At that point, we'll have contract negotiations, we'll have approvals from council, and hopefully all of that will happen by late October. We'll see. Construction then, if that goes well, construction could then begin in November. We have approximately a 2-year build to make this building happen. That may be a little bit generous, but we want to at least count for 2 years. And we will have a fairly lengthy, as moves go, a move getting the police station populated with the police department. It's not just furniture, as you know. So it's the dispatch cutover is a lengthy process that's incredibly complicated, as well as evidence. The chain of custody obviously needs to be maintained. So it's a fairly lengthy process to get everyone into the new police station, and it will be considered complete when everyone's out. So that's hopefully the future. I'd like to turn it over to these gentlemen to give you the presentation on the visuals. So again, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. My name is Brian Cornell. Very proud to be working on this. It's hard to believe that it's been 6 years, but it has. We started doing this project with a police station expert named Jim McLaren, an architect who has spent his life doing police stations all over the country. He was an amazing resource in the process of figuring this plan out. Essentially, because there's no parking now for the police station, effectively, it was very important to get adequate parking for staff and for the fleet vehicles. So on your left is the parking structure, and on your right is essentially the police station office building. It's made up of 4 levels, a basement, and then 3 levels above ground. So you're looking right now at the first floor plan. It's essential that we have connections into 2 streets, that there be 2 ways in and out for safety purposes. So we have the exit essentially onto Santa Barbara Street and the entrance on Coda, although those are both in and out entrances. And then the lobby itself, the main entrance, will be off that small little parking lot that's got 8 spaces available to the public. If there is a need for more spaces in the event there's a community event or something like that at this building, obviously its proximity to the parking lot there on Anacapa is really valuable. So the first floor is made up of, primarily public serving functions, and then the immediate area where the police officers are dispatched. Are we going to go to the basement next? So the basement is made up of functions that don't really need much light. All of the evidence is down there, also secure holding for anyone who would come in to be booked, and then some other different functions. Second floor. Oh, yes. I should also mention we have a shooting range in the parking structure there in the basement. So that's located so that the sound of that will not be heard by anybody, which is really convenient and works out pretty well. This will also have some of the critical, like SWAT vehicles and that kind of thing, are going to be down at this level. Then the first floor again, then the second floor. Up here is basically, this is the level where the majority of staff will park. It's important to note that all these parking levels align with the floors in the police station, so there's direct access across from each parking tier into the police station. So at this level will be the primary parking, and that leads it right into the locker facility. We've talked about this before with the commission, but I think it's very interesting. There was a lot of give and take about, do we have male, female lockers? And ultimately, the decision was to go with a common unisex locker facility where everybody, all of the staff, will be in this locker area and then be able to use the individual showers or toilets that surround it. And so it just creates a much more inclusive atmosphere. And I think it's really exciting for me because it's an example where architecture can make a difference in how a department like this will function. So really an awesome decision that was made by the city to go that direction. And then there are, at this level also, is a fitness center, which is at the second floor, and it's got a great deck. It's on the corner there of the building at Coda and Santa Barbara Street. And then additional administration functions. We can go, I should also mention that floor there is a meeting room that's going to be a flexible meeting room for community events, or can be broken into 2 meeting rooms, and that's in kind of that upper left-hand corner. And then the third floor is primarily investigations. The lab is up here. The lounge for staff is up at this level. That deck space that you see kind of in the middle is their deck area, and then dispatch is located up in that. Ah, there's a pointer. Yeah, that's great. Sorry about that.
Let's start over.
Actually, that's a perfect segue to turn it over to Jeff, who has done all the heavy lifting on this, and it's a heavy lift, let me tell you, coordinating all of our consultants. We've worked with another architectural firm up in Portland who has done a number of police stations, and they've been responsible for the interiors, and you'll see some images that they have created, which is really exciting. But I think where we're going to start first is just to kind of do a little fly around the building so you can get a sense of what it's going to feel like to the community.
Yeah, and so before we get into that, this is just a quick rendering from the corner. This shows that outdoor fitness space that Brian was referring to here at the corner. And then the large openings up at the investigations office, which are going to have just incredible views of the mountains and out to the ocean. So let's go to these videos to show you. So we'll start with the exterior of the building. So we're starting on Coda Street at the west side of the building. So this is the parking garage, and then we'll work down Coda up Santa Barbara Street to the entrance. So here you can see the entrance into the parking garage off of Coda Street. We've kind of lined the parking garage with some office functions so it doesn't necessarily look like a parking garage. You'll also notice the solar panels up on the roof of the parking garage. We're covering the entire roof of the parking garage and majority of the office building with the goal of achieving net zero for energy use, which is pretty exciting. Here we're at the corner, again looking at that deck on the second floor, and then we turn up Santa Barbara Street. And those openings are office spaces, so employees will benefit from all the natural light.
And I should mention that we're doing away with the parallel parking along Santa Barbara Street, so it's actually creating more landscape and buffer in front of the building along there.
So that two-story glass element there is the front door to the public lobby, and that is that 8 parking space surface slot that Brian was referring to that we're standing in before we get run over by the police car.
Santa Barbara Street is a one-way street. You're showing it.
Good catch. That was a test. So now we have a couple of interior videos that we'd like to show you. So we'll start with this one. This is focuses on more of the communal spaces. So public lobby, and it has that open stair up to the second floor, which is where you access the community room. Kind of up at the top of those stairs behind that blue tiled wall. This is the fitness space, so this is that outdoor patio space on the corner. This is the fitness space down in the basement. This is where all the heavy weights will be so that they're not being dropped on the floor and loud for the people below.
The ocean's not that close.
Yeah.
And this is the open locker up on the second floor. So here you can see it's literally open. And then there are individual changing rooms, shower rooms, toilet rooms that employees can use when they need to change.
You notice the ceilings are wood. This is because one of the sustainable features of the building is we're using cross-laminated timber as the horizontal structure of the building. And so it allows for these beautiful wood ceilings and is very sustainable material. And it's going to really make a difference, I think, in terms of the feel inside these buildings.
This is that third floor terrace space off of the break room. Okay. And the final video kind kind of focuses more on some of the workspaces within the building. So this is report writing and briefing room located on the first floor.
And that connects to the second floor conveniently so that there's a really nice flow of circulation without people having to use elevators.
This is that investigations open office up on the third floor.
It's going to be a great recruiting tool.
This is a records office on the first floor. So through that one-way glass that we're looking at there is the public service counter, and then the lobby on the other side of that. This is the field training offices up on the second floor. And then these are some of the conference rooms, meeting rooms, located kind of at the core of the building off of this open central stair, which is really going to help sort of connect vertically through the building. You can see we're kind of moving up through that stair, which has a skylight over the top of it, which is going to help bring, lots of natural light into the middle of the building. And then I think finally this is the 911 dispatch up on the third floor on the north side of the building, which also has access to a private little terrace, their own dedicated break room.
And lots of good natural light.
And that's it.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions? We'll hold comments until after we get public comments, but if you have any questions for the presenters, this would be a time to praise them. Lizzie, you are first.
Could you describe how you will be bringing satellite sites together? How many sites are off the main police station? I think that's an important element for the community to understand.
Great question. Currently, there are 4 locations. There's dispatch in the Granada Garage. We have behind Fire Station 3, I believe, on Sola, is the animal control, thank you. And then there's the existing police station, obviously, and then the annex on Anapamu. Sorry, these words weren't coming right away. But those 4 divisions, if you will all be coming together into under one roof.
Thank you.
Commissioner
So
Jones?
I was just at the dispatch center on my ride along this weekend. It's all dark in there. What's the thinking between having a dispatch center in the dark and the light?
If I could find my words, I'll try and answer that one. But we have an expert with
Gordon is
us.
gonna
You might be familiar with her.
Calling in the big guns now.
That's okay. This will work just fine.
Okay.
So with dispatch, we want to make sure we give them, what happens often with dispatch centers is they get put into more of a corner in the most unideal location in a building. We're very intentional about putting them in a great location in the building that also makes sense for the design of the building. We want to give them natural light and being very focused on the way in which the monitors are placed because there is an issue with glare and those other things, but they don't often get to leave dispatch. It's not like an officer who gets to go walk around. They're literally sitting or standing at their desk for long periods of time. So we want to make sure that they have the appropriate light, the appropriate break room right there so that they can take those short breaks. So it's very intentional about putting them in that location and having the natural light. They've been moved to a few different places, which is why they are where they are right now. So this is a great opportunity to make sure we have a ideal dispatch space, and the natural light is important.
So I have a question about police department this side. Does it require a heliport?
No. And in this particular instance, the entire top of the building is covered with solar panels, so that's a hard no.
I had a question about the old station. What's the thinking about that? The building.
Well, I think it's pretty clear to everybody that we desperately need housing. So I think the direction is going to be to put housing, workforce housing, and specifically housing for the city's workforce in that location. And it's an incredible opportunity because of its location to be that housing site.
Okay. Well, I just had a question about when you were showing the site plan, the lot that's just to the north, which is now the parking, I think, for the farmer's market, is that a city, does the city own that?
No, that's the state of California owns that. And I will say that Mr. Hess worked incredibly hard to see if some of that site could be utilized for this police station because, I don't think anybody makes any bones about the fact that this was a tight fit to get everything that the police station, the police department needed on this site, but those negotiations really weren't fruitful. So it remains a state of California parking lot.
So what's the thinking in terms of you needed expansion or thinking forward? If you have ever had to expand, what would be the
Well, I think
thinking there?
the program has anticipated going out in excess, frankly, of 50 years. So I think, given the population of Santa Barbara and looking at all the needs, we have really tried to plan this building so it has a 100-year lifespan. So hopefully, it goes even beyond that.
If the ocean doesn't correlate, that's right. Thank you.
Commissioner Jones?
Thank you. My question pertains to the Measure C funding. What happens, so this is the funding that's being used for the construction of the building? Is that correct?
Actually, it's really covering the soft costs for the building, all of the development up until now. In September, we're going to be having a bond measure that will cover the construction costs.
I see, okay. And then the soft costs, those are ongoing soft costs, or is that soft cost related to?
The soft costs will end up, it's all architecture and engineering fees, permit fees, staff time.
Got it.
All of that pretty much will switch over to the bond measure when that funding is in place.
I see, okay. And then, so what would happen to the Measure C funding at that point? So in other words, I guess I'm thinking, when the project is completed, does this funding sunset?
Measure C will actually cover the bond measure payments, so there will still be an obligation on Measure C for that.
Got it.
Sorry, I thought you were referring to just the budget costs, but yes, Measure C will be ongoing and covering the bond measure.
The bond measure, okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions at this point? Are there any public comments?
Vice Chair Ho, we do not have any in-person or online public comment.
Do the commissioners have any comments that they want to make about the presentation? Hearing none, you get out of town quick and easy. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you again.
Could we have the next item on our agenda, please?
Item 7, Santa Barbara Police Department Mission Strategy Reports.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Charlie Katsapis, Commander at Santa Barbara Police Department. And today we will be presenting our Q1 Mission Strategies Report. I know you've seen this before. These 4 quadrants represent both the quantitative and qualitative measures that we use when evaluating our performance as a department. So here we have the different categories broken down. I'll start with reducing harm, so upper left-hand corner there. First thing we had in Q1 was a decrease of 12% in violent crime, a decrease in total property crimes of 8%. You see there a 43% increase in DUI arrests in Q1. It's a pretty significant increase. A few factors potentially there. Number one, we've looked to increase our proactive DUI patrol on the night shifts. So when we have additional personnel, we've given the authorization for our line level supervisors to put out proactive teams to address issues surrounding driving while intoxicated. In addition to that, we also participate in OTS grants, so Office of Traffic Safety. And part of that grant, we do a variety of things, including proactive patrols, DUI checkpoints, and also educational stuff. So something called Know Your Limit, where we have officers go out to different nightclub settings and allow people to blow into a breathalyzer, talk about their limits in terms of blood alcohol level and how that might result in collision. So it's a combination of education and increased enforcement on our behalf for DUIs. We did see a slight increase in Q1 for stolen vehicles. I spoke briefly with the detective supervisor over property. No real big anomalies in terms of what we saw. We did have a couple cases with same suspects, so same offender, multiple cases, which might lead to some of that, but we went from 42 to 55 total cases in Q1. Transitioning to the second quadrant there, relationship building and quality of life. We had 336 co-response calls for service. Our co-response team is doing a fantastic job. We've expanded them to 7-day-a-week coverage. That's been a big win for us. A lot of those calls for service are actually proactive calls for service. So they're going out to address issues of mental health and mental health crisis within the community proactively. So that's not just calls coming in, that's them generating their own calls for service. So that's what we want to see, more proactive work. That's been a huge benefit to our community, and it's reflective in the numbers. 24 presentations, so that's community presentations or outreach. And then parking citations in Q1 were up 42%. That's another big jump. Our parking enforcement team has increased in personnel numbers. Because of that, it's allowed us to provide 7-day-a-week coverage when historically over the past year or two we didn't have that. So it's also allowed us to do proactive focus area patrols for parking. So this is when we have community members bring up issues in certain neighborhoods that are causing concern, or certain areas that we know to be problematic for parking-related issues. We can now direct patrols there, which has increased our citations pretty dramatically in Q1. Now, bottom left-hand corner, next quadrant, felt presence. 46% increase in focus area directed patrols. That is by design. That's our department telling our officers to focus specifically on locations where there's either data or community concern-driven issues that we're learning about. That's also probably a really good reason why we see those decreases in violent crime and proactive crime. That's our ability for officers to go out and strategically address issues within the community that are causing concern. That's where we see the focused area patrols being very helpful. 4,003 VIP hours. That's our volunteers and policing team. Again, a fantastic team that is continuing to grow. Lots of focus downtown, farmers market, provide a tremendous service to our community, all as volunteers. So we really appreciate that unit and what they bring to our team. And the last section here would be service. And so the first thing I'll discuss is our calls for service. So we prioritize our calls for service. You'll see priority 1 through 4 there. The gray boxes above, that would be the target goals for response time. As you can see, we meet all response times with the exception of priority 3 calls. We were at 31.8 minutes. The goal is 30 minutes, so slightly over there. But we did see a 10% increase in calls for service in that priority 3 category. So that could maybe attribute to that, but it's slightly over. Traditionally, we're within that range on all those categories, or really close, as you see here. And then the last thing I'll cover, just over 1,000 total reports that came in, 1,092, and we closed out 609 criminal investigations in the first quarter. So that concludes our first quarter mission strategies report, and we'd be happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions from any of the commissioners? Commissioner Jones?
Thank you. How do you determine in the service quadrant, the priority reports, how do you determine what your goals are? So how do you determine 5.9, 11.9?
Yeah, so most of those are driven by national standard. So there's a national standard set for response times for providing calls for service. Those calls for service are broken down by the threat to public. So, for example, priority one would be like a life or death situation, the potential for great bodily injury or death in a call for service. That's an emergency call, lights and sirens. And then we kind of taper on from that point on. So the numbers themselves are set by national standard, and we just model that national standard internally for what our goals are.
Thank you for reminding me. I remember that being said before. Thank you.
Commissioner Rodriguez?
I have a couple of questions, but going off that last, could you just remind the public what P1 through P4 is, and then what that means when they call?
Sure. So when a member of the public makes a call for service, our dispatcher will take that call, all the information, and then based upon the information they've received, they'll prioritize the call for service. Generally, a priority 1 call, priority 2 call, 3 call, and 4 call will be dispatched in that order. So sometimes this will lead to, for example, I'll run through them quickly. It'll be easier to explain. Priority 1 calls I just explained as a life or death situation, or a situation that could potentially lead to life or death. Priority 2 would be a situation where there's potential for harm to the public, or it's escalating into a disturbance that could lead to that happening. So that's slightly above priority 1. However, it's not a lights and sirens emergency response call. Priority 3, that's generally a call for service doesn't have an immediate threat to public safety, so not a threat to injury to the public, however, requires either a report or an officer to come out to, for example, keep the peace during a civil disagreement or something of that nature. Priority 4, that's generally just a report call. So that's like your cold auto burglary call, that's your theft call, that's your call where there's no immediacy to the response because it has already occurred or it doesn't require immediate police response. The times are set based upon priority. What I was getting to earlier when you first asked was that, let's just say you call in a priority 4 call for service. So my car was burglarized, we have it in the queue, and then in the meanwhile, a couple priority 2 calls come in, a priority 3 calls come in. We would generally dispatch those first, which might increase your wait time. So that's important for the public to know as well, that we would like to get to all calls for service as quickly as we can. However, we do follow this standard protocol for response to ensure that we're getting to the most dangerous calls or the ones that need our service quicker.
Thank you. So the reduction in crime other than DUI and parking seems to be consistent with the county data as well as the state data. And I'm wondering if you have ideas of why, at least locally, why we're seeing a reduction in crime.
Chief, I don't know if you have any ideas on that.
Is that a lifeline? I got it.
I have my own ideas internally. I'm not terribly versed on the state level data and the county level, so I want to speak to it if I can.
So, yeah, I did see the county data, came out yesterday. I can tell you, I think for us here locally in the city of Santa Barbara, it's multiple different reasons. I think we're kind of seeing what the new norm is going to be coming out of COVID and what that's ultimately going to look like. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to compare it to COVID. Everyone saw a spike as we came out of COVID. So as much as I would like to, hold on to these numbers, I do think that we're seeing some adjustments and we shouldn't get, not that I don't want to give everyone great credit for the good work they're doing, but we did see a spike and we've seen some things as a result of COVID and coming out of COVID. We saw nationally the violent crime go up. And, here is no different. We typically follow those trends. So I think part of it is the trend of now we're seeing things start to stabilize following COVID, following the different shifts that we've seen. The other thing for us locally is we have in fact changed the way in which we do business, the way in which we are responding to calls for service, the way in which we're doing focus areas. We've changed our staffing models. We have more officers working when it is busier. We're trying to really address the community concerns. which I think also then, with the way in which we're doing that and our increased visibility, has the direct effect of driving our crime rates down as well. So I think part of it is we're seeing a leveling out after the national, everyone in the nationally saw that increase in violent crime. We're seeing that kind of level. But at the same time, I have to give a lot of credit to the men and women of the department because we have made some significant changes in the way in which we are providing public safety to the community. So I think it's a combination of both.
Okay.
I I don't want to jinx us and say, we can hopefully continue to look forward to that because, when we look at probably 24 in comparison to 23, we'll be closer to being, flat versus the bigger decrease. I don't know that we'll continue to see, such a large percentage. I mean, I hope so. We're doing really good work, but I also want to be reasonable about what we expect to see as we move into the future.
Great. So I'm hearing that a contributor to reduce crime is proactive policing. With summer being weeks away and students being out of school, I personally noticed an increase in tagging around town, which usually that's the precursor to juvenile activity. And I'm wondering if and maybe this is big, I know we had a presentation a couple months ago, but if you can briefly explain or describe to the public how you prepare for students being out of school in the summer.
Well, for us, we don't do anything actually different as the students come out of school. We maintain, diligence in terms of what we're seeing, what the officers seeing in their patrol areas, what our community action team is seeing, and then adjusting as we see that. But, with the way our staffing levels currently are, we don't have the ability to just put out more officers on the street. We just adjust to our current staffing and the things that we are doing to address the things that we're seeing. That's where the focus areas and the directed patrols are so important. That's why our relationships with the community are so important because we have built that trust and we get a lot of, the community will then call and tell us, this is what we're seeing. Officers are also paying attention. So when the officers start to see the graffiti come up, they're doing their own directed patrols to make sure that they are in those areas when they're seeing that to prevent anything further from occurring. But we don't actually, have a different summer policing strategy. Mm-hmm. It is what we do to address these things as we see them all year round. And we also have to understand we want our kids out of the house and enjoying, so we also don't, that's also a fine balance as well. So we're not looking to over-police them as well. We want them to enjoy their summer and to, be able to ride their bikes, hopefully not too fast down State Street, but, or the wheelies or anything like that. But we are doing different things to try to address those issues as well. We're doing increased patrols with our officers that are on bikes on State Street, trying to proactively do some education and to deal with some of those issues.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Hurlinger.
Oh, I know you may have covered this, but quickly, on the parking citations, the staffing, you went from 5 days a week to 7, is that what you said? Or could you repeat that again? How you increase the staffing and then what does it mean in terms of more revenue? If we have 42% more citations, does that help us at all with the budget or no?
No. There's a couple of things with parking citations. We actually don't make a great deal of money off the parking citations. It's a very small percentage that we actually get back to the city. A lot goes to every place else. But the other piece is we were at, not too long ago, we only had 2 parking control officers.
Okay.
And now we've been hiring, and so now we're up to 9 parking control officers.
And is it a 24-hour?
No.
Okay.
They're not 24 hours a day.
So who enforces parking at night or after the shifts are over or whatever? Do the police officers do that?
Patrol officers do that during the night.
Okay.
But we've made a very concerted effort to start trying to deal with some of the downtown issues that we have in the loading zones, the red zones, some of the issues that we see in the funk zone. We're doing more of the permit. There's a lot of residential permit areas, so making sure that we're getting and writing citations in those areas. before our primary focus was just on street sweeping, and now we are able to do just more than the street sweeping. And I know a lot of folks that have been really wanting parking enforcement, and we have too. Now they're seeing it, and, I think a few of them have also gotten some citations themselves.
So do we have more vehicles also? I mean, more parking enforcement vehicles than we had? And, I mean, you have more staffing now, so are there,
Are you asking if we have more vehicles for them
Yeah.
to use?
yes.
Yes, and we also have a couple that have been bike trained, and we're doing different
Oh.
things as well
Okay.
to, they're doing foot patrols, they're doing bike patrols. We're actually looking at, we're in the process of purchasing 2 EV vehicles for parking control, so we're doing some different things in terms of how we deploy them.
Okay, thank you.
And I have a couple of questions for you. Focusing on the relationship building, you have the 336 co-response. There's no data for that from the preceding year. Is that because that wasn't operational in the preceding year, or?
That program has changed dramatically over the past year. And so that program has gone from one officer and one clinician now to a 2-officer team. It's been expanded. The roles and responsibilities in terms of which we expect from them have changed. And so it in some ways would be unfair to compare the programs from the previous year when it really started, because the foundation wasn't there in the same way that it is now. And so the expectation now is it's grown, it's more broad. It includes proactive work as well on top of the reactive work, and that's why you'll start to see this data. And we expect this to increase and to improve over the next year or two as we further develop the program as well.
How is the proactive work determined?
So if we deal with an individual, or say an officer becomes aware of an individual who's experienced mental health crisis or can use some assistance, that can be relayed to our officers and to their clinician partner. They can go and seek out a contact with them, either by appointment at their house, on the street, as a way to establish a relationship before a crisis occurs, as a way to present with options for help outside of the span of control of the police department. So looking at some of our community partners and how they might be able to help out. Generally, this is our way of going out and trying to address an issue before it becomes one, to be a support partner, to establish rapport and relationship early on, knowing that that benefits us tremendously if we do run into a call for service down the road.
So just so I'm a little clear, when I had my first ride-along with the police department, the officer I was with, who was fabulous, was stopping a number of people in places where she knew them and she knew their history and their background, and encouraging them to walk 4 blocks over to the place where they might get some treatment or warming or things like that. Would that be considered a proactive involvement or not?
Absolutely. That's a proactive involvement, it sounds like, on the patrol side. On the co-response side, keep in mind that's a team that's partnered with the mental health clinician from behavioral wellness. So it adds an element that patrol officer doesn't have, which is a clinician who rides with them. So a level of expertise, a level of other resources now available, but the same concept. If we go out and establish those relationships early on, they're incredibly beneficial to when we have contacts down the road or to avoiding problems altogether. You'll actually see this happen in real life where an officer will engage with somebody who's having mental health crisis, for example, and can't make headway with them, and then an officer will show up who's got that rapport, and the entire situation will change. And it leads to conclusions that are mutually beneficial. And so this is a program that's gaining a lot of steam and momentum within our agency, and we're looking to grow it as we continue on here in the next few years.
I got one last question. Could you just give me sort of a picture of what the presentation engagement outreach is?
That could be a variety of things. So that can be a neighborhood, maybe like a neighborhood outreach. So for example, a neighborhood might say, hey, we have a neighborhood watch program we've just established. We've been having issues with, name the problem. Can you please come and speak to that? So we might show up with a group of officers, discuss the issues, provide guidance, that sort of thing. It could be that. It could be with a community group. It could be with a youth group. So it's basically our opportunity to go out proactively within our community to establish relationships and present on material that might be beneficial to the public that we police and provide safety for.
Does the coffee with the cop fall into that pattern?
Exactly, yeah. The chief just mentioned that to me as well. So coffee with a cop's another example of this. So that's again, a proactive measure on our behalf to have community engagement.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Lizzie, do you have an additional one, please?
Yep, sorry, I forgot to ask this one. Every time you present data, I'm always just so impressed. Not only with the numbers, but the presentation of the numbers. And that's so important in developing community trust, is having this data available. So I just want to thank you for that. And also, can you tell the public where they can find this, other than watching this meeting?
So this data is not publicly up on the website at this point. We are looking to be able to provide this in a forward-facing public way. We're just not there yet. So that is the goal within the next year, is to have that public-facing. I would like to also give a great deal of credit to Assistant Chief Arroyo. This is actually something that she started before I got here. I just came back from Cal Chiefs this morning, and she actually presented this whole structure at Cal Chiefs to several other chiefs in California, and has already gotten a great deal of ask for us to provide the same type of thing, and some guidance for them to use the same structure, because I think when you talk about it in this way and you change the language that you're talking about, it makes a big difference with the community. So I just want to point out, this wasn't taken from a manual anywhere else, or this is something that is what I would consider very innovative and new. And it was received that way at the conference as well. So as we work through it, we're still making some changes and some tweaks to it. And, you know, that's why it's going to take us a little more time to be able to do this in terms of a public facing, because everyone else will get to borrow from us. We're paving the way on this.
And Commissioner Rodriguez, I wanted to add, we've been reorganizing the Fire and Police Commission website. So on the City of Santa Barbara website, Fire and Police Commission, you'll not only find the agendas, the live videos, but we've been uploading all of the staff reports and presentations in their PowerPoint form. So this would be listed under the staff reports, and they're actually in order in terms of the month and the year.
Thank you.
And hopefully the topic.
Absolutely the topic.
Thank you. All right, if there's no further questions, thank you, Commander. Chief Gordon. Oh, public comments, I apologize. Do we have any public comments?
Vice Chair Hill, we do not have any in-person or online public comments.
All right, thank you.
Moving on to item 8, Santa Barbara Fire Department incident reporting data.
Vice Chair Hill, members of the commission, good afternoon. Chris Males, your fire chief. Going to talk just a little bit about our Q1 reports and where the department's lying as far as how busy we are and what we've been responding to. And then I've thrown a couple extra slides in that will talk a little bit about our public education and public outreach. So first thing I want to say is anything that the fire department responds to, any reason that someone calls 911 is put into one of these categories. So they're rather broad categories that can encompass a number of types of emergencies. So looking at Q1, we'll start with fires. During Q1, there were 46 fires that the fire department responded to. I want to preface this statistic with the fact that these are actual fires where firefighters likely pulled a hose line off and had to actively extinguish a fire. This is not a cigarette butt smoldering. This is not a smoldering trash can. This is not an overheated car. This is actual fires. These reports require the fire captain and/or fire investigator to investigate the cause, determine the origin, that kind of thing. So while it represents a small amount, and by the way, this 1.53 is a little bit small for the quarter, we're just north of about 2% over the last 4 years. Doesn't sound like a lot, but once again, when you look at it, it's really a fire every couple of days that's of some significance. EMS and rescue, and of course, encompasses the main reason that we respond to calls.
Again, this ebbs and flows somewhere between about 66 and 72% is where we sit. So 71.33 for the quarter is right where I would expect. Hazardous condition type calls, fuel spill from a vehicle, radiator fluid on the ground, power lines down, tree down in traffic, things like that. Service call. That could be somebody that needs assistance shutting off water that might be flooding their house, or just someone that may need assistance. A person that's fallen but is not hurt and just needs help back up. Your good intent calls, that's kind of a big catch-all for someone who is calling thinking there's an emergency, but upon arrival, the fire department has determined that there's no hazard. Another example would be crews are dispatched to a structure fire. They get into the area and they find a chimney that someone's burning, has something burning in their fireplace. That would be a good intent call. The thought was this was a fire, but we arrived on scene and found no problem. And false alarms are just that. Typically fire alarms ringing, get on scene, they investigate. Our crews do a great job. Whenever there's a fire alarm ringing, we assume that it is a fire. And so when we arrive on the scene, we check the exterior of the building. Of course, we look for smoke, and then we try to make access into the building and check every part of the building before we rule out that it's a false call. So totaling up for our responses for the quarter, 3,014, and that is exactly where I expect it to be, with about 12,000 calls per year is where we're at. As I reported at an earlier, I believe we were 11,560 for the year last year, so we're trending right normally. Okay, in past we've talked about response times, we've talked about dispatch time, we've talked about turnout time, we've talked about travel time, and then we've talked about overall response time. One thing that I want to leap off of with the police department, they talked about their priority calls, priority 1, 2, 3, and 4. We actually prioritize our calls by really 2 priorities, and they are whether they're an emergency call, which means red lights and siren, or non-emergency call. So when we're looking at statistics, we actually look at only emergency responses, okay? Now there's a caveat to that. We might be dispatched out red lights and siren to an incident, let's say an injury traffic accident. En route, the dispatcher says, this is non-injury, but there's a radiator leak from a vehicle. We would go out red lights and siren, and then we would downgrade to no red lights and siren. The converse is true. Perhaps we could be dispatched to a non-injury traffic accident with a radiator leak, and en route somebody calls back and says, no, actually there's somebody hurt. So we would upgrade, okay? We've parceled those out. So in these statistics, we're only looking at from start to finish emergency calls. So our dispatchers process the call, and then we look just by shift, just to break it down a little bit more, you can see that we're averaging about a minute and a half. And that's 24 hours a day. That could be at 8 o'clock in the morning when our firefighters are on the floor checking out the apparatus. That could be at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when they're doing building inspections, or it could be at 2 o'clock in the morning. So really, we're averaging about a minute and a half before the wheels are rolling, and that's decent. It's a little bit slow. The question that Commissioner Jones asked about where do these standards come from to the police department, the fire department uses the National Fire Protection Administration, NFPA, and those standards are everywhere. Their standards are on fire extinguishers. They're on everything is NFPA standard. We use 2 standards in response. We use NFPA 1225 that kind of looks at the dispatch, and then we look at NFPA 1710 that looks at our response times from the fire station to the scene. We would like that number to be at 60 seconds. So we're a little north of that. Couple of reasons. And it was really interesting to see the police department's presentation on their police building. Our fire stations, some are very small, some are 2 stories and very large. That all contributes to turnout time. how quickly we can get from wherever we are in the station to the fire engine with wheels rolling. So we're a little bit north of that. We've implemented some changes recently, and we're going to be implementing some additional changes that I think are going to bring that time down. Travel time. Again, you see that we're sitting at around 4.5 minutes of travel time. So that means from the time the wheels are rolling to wherever we are until we go on scene. That number stays very consistent. I'm very cognizant of the fact that I want to be able to get our firefighters out the door as quickly as possible. But when it comes to travel time, we really have to err on the side of safety. So you'll never see me as a fire chief saying, drive faster, get there. Our firefighters are driving 40 to 70,000 pound apparatus through narrow streets of Santa Barbara, and they're very good at their job. So we never want to encourage them to hurry up. But we do have some mitigation factors, such as triggers that turn the lights green, things like that, which help with our response time. So response time from dispatch to scene, data is typically measured in the 90th percentile. 90% of the calls, what's our benchmark? And while we would love to get to calls in about 6 minutes and 30 seconds, we're getting there in about 7 minutes and 10 seconds. Once again, I attribute that to the fact that this is, you've heard me say this before, if you've heard me speak publicly, this is actually a very difficult city to not only provide fire protection for, but to just simply meander around town. Very narrow streets, a lot of one-way streets. Again, our apparatus are large, and we drive, with due regard always for safety. We don't want to cause another emergency on the way to an emergency. So for Q1, we were averaging overall about 7 minutes. And again, that's all calls for service. That's up in Station 7 up on the Riviera, or that's downtown. So, so from start to finish, we're at 7 minutes. So again, just back to it, these are Code 3 red lights and siren calls for service. Again, not your Code 2 just hazardous condition call. Okay, and just a couple of more slides that really isn't response time data, but I like to put this in. Always proud of the training hours and time that our crews put in. Again, and you've heard me say this, and but I think it bears repeating for the public, very complex city to cover. Anybody that came to our community talks over the last few weeks, you heard me talk about, we have miles of coastline, we have ocean, we have a harbor, we have a wharf, we have a railroad, we have an interstate, we have aging infrastructure, large buildings, a wildland-urban interface, and an airport. That's a lot for a city of 21 square miles. So there's a lot of cross-training that occurs with our firefighters. All of the firefighters in the upper right that says Ocean Rescue, excuse me, those are regular firefighters that are assigned to fire engines. And then the picture below is a wildland drill. So we literally go from the ocean to the mountains with our training. And so our crews conducted, our personnel conducted 4,500 hours of training just in Q1. So that's a lot of training. And then community outreach. For Q1, 254 community members, 4 station visits, 3 school visits, fire extinguisher training, LISTOS class, and we're particularly proud of our social media. And you might have seen an increase in our social media presence in the last few months. And we are reaching over 30,000 people with our social media presence. And of course, social media serves 2 purposes. We can do our routine proactive messaging, public education, but it also serves as a hub of information during our incidents. In the first quarter, of course, we had some critical storms. We had activation of our EOC, and during that, of course, we have a PIO embedded into the EOC, and information is sent out as quickly as it is verified for accuracy. We often have our fire department PIO next to the city PIO in the EOC, because often the fire department PIO will get information from the field via the radio, and the two work together to make sure that it's not only seamless, but it's very, very accurate. So anyway, that's just a little bit about our first quarter. One thing just to remember that, and again for the public, we have 8 fire stations, but our Station 7 up on the Riviera and our Station 8 at the airport, their call volume is rather low. Station 7 on the Riviera runs about 300 initial calls for service, meaning in their area, and the airport runs 50 to 70 calls a year. So really the great majority of 11,000 calls or so are handled by the 6 stations kind of in downtown area of Santa Barbara and the Mesa. So that's it. Just a quick overview and looking forward to any questions you might have.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions?
On your slide, there was a ARFF?
Oh, thank you.
What is that?
Aircraft Rescue Firefighting. That's an airport call.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
ARF. It's fun to say ARF, but it really does mean something.
At a recent city council meeting, there was discussion about how the relocation of the farmers market was going to affect the fire department and its ability to drive around and maneuver around, blocking off of the streets. Can you talk a little bit about how the department is working around that?
So thank you for the question. Yeah, there were a few, the fire marshal was concerned at the council presentation of a few things that weren't put into the final report. It's not that the city had not looked at it, it's just it didn't make it into the final report. There's Fire Station 1, as you know, is our busiest station. We're running 3,600 calls a year out of that station. But what's really important to understand is the data was only for that station, and it didn't include ambulances, police cars, or fire engines coming from other stations. So one of the things that was most important is that we wanted what the fire marshal called a relief valve. We needed a street that was really dedicated to emergency vehicle movement back and forth in the downtown core. And so we were able to look at Figueroa Street, and it looks like we're going to be utilizing Figueroa Street, which is just 1 block away from Station 1. So I know a memo did go to council updating them that the fire and police departments are good with the suggested inputs.
Great, thank you. And just a general comment, it's always impressive looking at that you're able to get out the door in 1.5 minutes, because I know I can't, and that you're able to get to a scene within, I think you said 7 minutes. So that's just very, very impressive. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's actually funny. I always tell my friends, they said, what is it like? And I said, I'm going to come over to your house and set your alarm clock in the middle of the night. And when I set that alarm, I want you in your car driving down the street in 1.5 minutes or a minute. And they look at me like, yeah, there's no way. And then I usually say, well, it could happen once or it might happen 5 times. So when your alarm clock goes off, start driving. So yeah, it's an interesting thing, and our folks do it well. They literally go from, just maybe working on a drill to, on the engine and responding in all of their personal protective equipment in a very short period of time.
Great job.
All right, I have a couple of little questions because I never remember acronyms. Listos class, what's Listos?
Listos is a Spanish outreach classes, largely based on the CERT curriculum, the Citizens Emergency Response Team curriculum. And it provides additional education for families, really in all languages, to really learn to take care of themselves during a disaster and to be valuable community members to be able to assist in a disaster.
Okay, great. And then the other one was, you mentioned EOC and PIO.
Okay. And thank you for this. It's interesting. I remember when I first started, and I remember looking at my first page of acronyms thinking, I'm never going to remember these. So I appreciate you. Those ones I can remember.
I
ARF
suppose
is
I've heard
always
them
my
before.
favorite.
That doesn't mean I remember.
EOC is our Emergency Operations Center. When we have a major incident in the city of Santa Barbara, we assemble a team. The Emergency Operations Center, the actual physical center, is at the fire department, Fire Station 1. And we assemble a team of city employees that facilitate all aspects of the disaster. So not just fire and police response, but things like logistics, planning, finance, Who's going to pay for tracking of money to cover this incident? Of course, public information. And then you have the operations side, you know, the boots on the ground that are actually mitigating an incident. But you have the support that must be done. Same thing happens with a major brush fire. A major brush fire has what's called a base camp, and for all intents and purposes, that's an EOC for the major fire.
And then PIO?
PIO, Public Information Officer.
Okay. And your public information officer coordinates closely with the police's separate public information officer?
So, yeah, so our public outreach, and it's Liliana Encinas, by the way. She's our bilingual public outreach coordinator. She does a masterful job promoting and educating our communities, and does a lot of the proactive messaging. We additionally have a cadre of firefighters that are PIO trained, that can go into our social media at, say, 3 o'clock in the morning, so we don't have to call Liliana, and can proactively send out messaging on social media or even send out a press release. But public safety works really well together. Our PIOs are talking to each other, okay? Because we don't want to both send out say a press release from one from fire and one from police. So we typically get together and go, well, this is primarily a law enforcement incident. For example, a traffic accident. It's really primarily a law enforcement. We're there for the injuries and for the hazards, but the investigation belongs to police. So typically we'll have the police department do that. But then we also have the city PIO. So we also work with the city PIO too.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Herring, oh, sorry.
Is there an update on the EOC, the county EOC? I see it's under construction, the new one for the county. What's going on with that?
Actually, thank you for that question. That is not the EOC. That is the Regional Fire Dispatch Center. So the RFCC, Regional Fire Communications Center, is, you're absolutely right, it is immediately adjacent to the county's Office of Emergency Management, and in fact, part of the building is for the expansion of the county's EOC. The great amount of it, though, is for the Regional Dispatch Center. The lid is on it, which means it's watertight. So they had some construction delays, of course, with the El Nino, but now that it's watertight, it is proceeding very quickly. They think that the building is going to be done, I believe it's June 21st. But there's what they call some burn-in time, which means they have to get the computer systems up and they have to get them operating for a period of time. So actually the updated move date for the fire department to move to the regional center is October 1st. And I'm really glad, Commissioner Herlinger, that you asked that question, because it got me thinking why the police department was doing their presentation. While I'm presenting all of this stuff to you, with the new Regional Dispatch Center, they are incorporating a program called First Watch, and all of this will be available on a dashboard. You can literally go on and see the response times of every single fire station in the county, exactly what their turnout time is, what their response time is, and there's going to be a running active list of all of the incidents in the county that are going on. It's a public-facing website that's going to be open for everybody to see. So my presentations will be more brief after they open.
So the First Watch will be something that will become active after October?
After October, when the center opens, correct.
All right, thank you. Are there any additional comments from the public?
Vice Chair Hill, we do not have any in-person or online public comment for this item.
And any additional comments from the commissioners? Very good. Thank you so much, Chief. So the next, Madam Clerk, the next item on the agenda is?
Item 9 is commission and staff communication.
All right, so this is the opportunity for the commissioners to share with the public any meetings or events they've attended, communications they've had, or items they would like to agendize for future meetings, or to propose any public statements for the commission's consideration. Ms. Rodriguez?
So I attended last week's Coffee with a Cop which took place on the East Side Library, and it was a great opportunity not only to support our police department, but also to inform the public about the commission and our purpose, and let them know that it's a volunteer endeavor, and invite them to participate. And there were quite a few parents who were interested, so I encourage our commissioners to attend those and just really communicate with the public on, that we would like them to participate. Also, you heard Chief Mayles talk about the importance of training because of our complex city. So I would like to ask if our Vice Chair could attend the City Council meeting on June 4th, I think, to just read the statement that we issued suggesting that the city consider funding the training portion of the budget.
I would like to delegate that to someone because I will be in New York City on the 4th. Can I
Vice
make-
Chair Hill, we can inquire with Chair Dozer if she's available. So usually the chair or vice chair would share that public statement. And June 4th is the budget deliberations with council. Yeah. So I will reach back to her and follow up.
Thank you. All right. Commissioner Hurlinger.
So I did a ride-along, my second one with Officer Bruce last Saturday, and it was rather uneventful, but it was a good opportunity. I got to see the dispatch center as well. And I'll be participating in the interviews for the captain next week at the fire. And then I want to note that we had a successful meeting without our attorney here, and I'm wondering how that happened.
Don't tell him that.
You have another question?
Commissioners, I just wanted to share our new city administrator, Kelly McAdoo, began this week. She plans on joining us for our June meeting, and apologize that she wasn't able to attend this evening. As you can imagine, it's been packed. So she had her first council meeting and going into budget deliberations and the budgeting process, and of course, meeting all the new personnel and city staff that she'll be working with. So excited to have her here and excited to have her engaged in prioritizing the commission's work as well.
Do we have any other comments or communications from the commission? That brings our commission meeting to an end, and if there's no objection, then this would be the adjournment of the commission at 5:40 approximately.
16.
5:17.
There you go. I think it's a record.